Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A session. And today we talk about grief in all the forms and shapes, about the feelings, about ways to cope, about your experiences. So we will have questions. Please keep in mind this is being recorded, so it will be available for public later. So the first question is from Michelle. And Michelle asks, "Hi, I lost both of my parents within 4 months of each other. Mom to cancer and dad to a traumatic fall, broken heart 4 months later. How does this affect the grieving? Will it take longer? And when will the foggy grief lift or ease?" Thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle. This is a very complex question, and thank you for asking. And I'm very sorry for your losses. It must have been very hard to lose both. Of course, I don't know all the details. From what I understand, your losses happened one after another. And in this case, our nervous system, our brain needs time to process both losses, right? And sometimes we don't have time to adjust to the new reality. So if we have multiply losses, it's called cumulative grief in some sources. It's like we have grief that accumulates. It's getting bigger or layered. So sometimes we don't even know when one grief starts and one another ends, or what we are grieving, or who we are grieving. I cannot say if it affects in a way that it takes longer, because it can be yes, it can be no. The reason for that is that there is no real timeline for grief. So I don't have any standards to give you, like after 6 months or 1 year, it should be this or that way. Or like after 5 years, it should be that way. In this sense, we don't have any reference to compare to say how long it should take in case of one loss and in case of two losses. But yes, it can be a factor that can make grief more layered and more complex, because you will need to grieve persons and all things associated with them in your life, all the things connected to them in your life. So short answer would be, will it take longer? Maybe. Yes, maybe not. How does this affect the grieving? As I said, yes, it can become more layered because we need time to process all our losses. And if we hadn't had time to process one and then another comes, of course, it adds on to the stress, to the time that we need to process and to cope. Yeah, in this case, I would recommend to look into each of those losses, make space for both of them, and take even more care of yourself. And also, after multiply losses, usually we have, or we may have, more responsibilities. And of course, that can add on to the stress. And the second part of the question, when will the foggy grief ease? Foggy grief, I love this word. Grief fog is actually very valid and recognized part of grief. So we can have difficulties to concentrate, to think clearly. We may find ourselves forgetting things and being not that focused as we used to be. We can be disoriented. We may feel exhausted. It's all very normal part of grief, because our brain and body needs time to adjust to the new reality, to understand what's going on. Because after the event of loss, though we know it happened, but for all our system, time is needed. Yeah. And again, here, unfortunately, I cannot give you any exact timeline. I would love to. That would be very convenient, but there's no timeline. And the most important thing, that gradually you notice little moments of relief, of peace, of focus. They may be not long, but still you will focus better, or gradually you will, or you will find some joy in little things again. You will be able to get back to your work, to your friendships, maybe not in the way you did before. And I would like to invite you to focus not on completely removing or reducing the foggy grief, but noticing and appreciating the little shifts, of your focus, of your concentration, of your ability to find joy and purpose in things. Maybe those will be different things, not like before. Right? With time, gradually, it will become easier. It doesn't mean it will go away, unfortunately, especially with big losses, with losses of the people we love. It may stay with us for the entire life, but we do adjust. Yeah, we do find meaning, ideally, and it can also be easier on some days, and on some days it can come back with intensity, and this is also totally normal. So I'd like to encourage you to think of it as an ocean, that the grief comes in waves. Sometimes it's more intense, sometimes it's less intense, and all of it is absolutely normal. The only thing is that if after 1 year, there are different opinions on that, 6 months, 1 year, you are not able to work, you're not able to keep your social connections, you're not able to take care of yourself, you abandon the basic self-care, I encourage you to seek professional help, because it can be the sign of a prolonged grief disorder or depression or many other things. Other than that, grief is just absolutely normal, and the foggy grief can stay with us for a long time. Thank you for your question. I wish you a lot of strength on this journey. Yeah, so this was from Michelle. So next question is anonymous, and it is about the death of a parent. My mom died and I couldn't say goodbye. I wish I could have said goodbye and held her hand and been with her. I went out of the room and missed those last moments. How to deal with that constant wishing I could say bye and I love you. And also how to deal with regret. And also how to deal with feeling in some way responsible for death. Like, if only I had to do these, or if I just had to not to do that, or like if I hadn't left my mom, then my mom wouldn't have died. Yeah, thank you for your question. It is a hard one and also very common one. So you're definitely not alone feeling this way. And I can also relate personally very much. From what I hear, it is mostly about regret, right? So something happened that you wish had turned out differently. So you wish you had been there in the room with her and had said goodbye, and also the feelings of responsibility that you somehow could have prevented her death by any action. This is very, very common in grief, and it's very hard to carry. When I work one-to-one with my clients, I usually invite them to explore this feeling. What if, right? So what if and if only, and this is what we call counterfactual thinking, meaning that we think that we could have changed something or should have changed something. And sometimes it is true, we could, and sometimes we couldn't, right? And it's important to explore that and to ask yourself, okay, if I hadn't left the room, what could have happened, or what would have happened? And just tell your story. What is your story about that? What could have happened if you had done it in a different way? And see what comes up. If I hadn't left the room, my mom would have, and then see what comes up, or I would have. And about the next part, about the feeling of responsibility, also to explore it in the same way. If I hadn't done this, what could have happened? If I had done this, what would have happened? So to explore your own story around that, your own expectation, your own wish, what would have happened? What story does it carry for you? Yeah, sometimes even with this part, we feel already some relief, because we can see that there are things that we could control and that we couldn't. Yeah, but I will talk about it in a minute. And then regret is very specific for grief, because I think, and I know from my own experience and from my professional work, that in the moments of loss, or when we know we will lose someone, maybe they are sick already, and or when that happens, we still want to control something. So it's very natural feeling because we have feelings for them and we want the best outcome. And this clinging to the regrets that I should have done something, I could have done something, this can be the form of control, right? So we want to have control over the situation. We can think that if we had done this thing, one little thing or one big thing, that would have changed the whole situation. So it gives us a sense of control. Yeah, I was in charge, I was responsible, and that happened because of me. And it can make sense to us because we can explain the situation like that. Yeah, so it's because of us. It's my fault. The thing is that it can be also our brain tricking us into believing that we were able to control things. In many cases, we couldn't, or most of them we can't control when it comes to disease, to death, to loss. And it's very hard to accept for us as adults. Yeah, we want to be active. We want to have control, to have power to change the outcome. But sometimes we can't. We are powerless. We are helplessness. And it's very hard to accept. And so we can start these thought games and spiraling into what if and if only. We are trying to make sense out of the situation that we couldn't change. Yeah, so it's very normal, but it can also be very hard because it takes a lot of energy to be there in this spiraling. Is, of course, it's not productive and not constructive. And what to do with that is, first of all, I encourage you to look at the bigger picture, to see what you've done for your mom, the moments you shared, the moments you had together, at the time you had together, maybe some beautiful memories you have, to remember the ways you contributed when you were there for her. Yeah, so to go away from that one thing that happened, like, for example, you left the room, and to bring all your focus to one this thing. Now the picture is very big. And this one thing doesn't define your relationship with your mom and your love for your mom or any feelings you had for your mom. Yeah. So to have a bigger picture and to say, yes, there were many good things too. I did care for her. I showed up for her. That's why this action that you think you could have done differently in a bigger picture, that doesn't have that much weight. And second, I think it's helpful to see what was in our control and what wasn't. You can even write it down when you start thinking, oh, what if I could have, and that would have been different. Write down what you could objectively control and what you couldn't. Write down all your limitations, all your other responsibilities, your health, distance, any other factors. And on the other side, the things that you truly could control, right? And this can give you a bigger picture of what was really going on. Because when we're going through grief, that's a huge stress for us, emotionally and physically. We can quickly focus on these things. It's like to put a spotlight on one thing and believing that if not this thing, that would have been different. In many cases, it would, in most cases. And if it's so strong for you, this wish to say goodbye, to hold your hand, it's absolutely understandable. I can just absolutely relate myself. You can still do it, even if she's not there anymore. I always talk about the power of rituals. You can perform any meaningful activity. Maybe you can write your letter. Maybe you can build a meaningful spot with your objects or pictures. Maybe find meaningful spot in the nature, maybe in your garden or in park close to the river, some place that is meaningful for you, and you can go there and talk to her and say everything that you wanted. You can still do that. Yes, your connection to your mom hasn't disappeared after her death. Your connection, your relationship is still there. You can still do that through rituals. And that can bring a lot of relief and sense of connection. And also, because of course I don't know the whole story, sometimes we do make mistakes, right? Because we are human. I don't know anyone who wouldn't have regrets, to be honest, myself included. We can still make amends. We can ask for forgiveness again through rituals, through meaningful actions. We can change our behavior if it was something we wish we could have done differently towards the person we loved. We can take care more of the people we still have around us, the people we love. So we can pour this energy to care of other people, to show them the love we wish we could have shown the person we lost. We can volunteer, we can do charity work, and also practice self-compassion and self-forgiveness, because there's no person in the world who would make mistakes. Yeah. And sometimes we think that it was a mistake. Sometimes it was a mistake. Of course, there are different situations. And it's important to learn to forgive yourself for that, because every relationship is messy. Every relationship is complex. So we are not always at our best capacity or behavior. And this is normal. And clinging to that regret or to self-blame, of course, it doesn't serve us. It's very, very crucial to work on that, to practice self-compassion, saying it all belongs, and allow yourself to have this imperfect ending if it's not what you hoped for, because that's how it is. That was out of your control. Absolutely. And another thing, maybe it will sound strange for someone, but I see it a lot. And also in my case, in some of the deaths that I experienced, that brings me comfort to think that for some people, it's easier to go, to die without their loved ones close to them. I do believe that too. And if they passed away this way, maybe it also has some meaning. It doesn't mean you failed them. It doesn't mean it's because of you. It does mean you're a bad person. It happened that way, and it cannot be changed. And maybe they had their own reasons to leave at this exact moment, out of sense of protection, out of sense of their own peace, out of coincidence. It can be anything. Yeah, so there can be many variables to that situation, right? So I encourage you to be patient with yourself, to be self-compassionate with yourself, to explore that through reflection, through rituals, and to gradually find kind of peace with that. Of course, from my own experience, I know it barely goes away, but at least when you catch yourself spiraling into these regrets, to catch yourself there and remind yourself you're human, you have your own limitations. You cannot control everything that happened. Thank you for your question. That's a very, very big one. Let me check the chat. Okay. Next question. I see that it is related partially, so it's good that we have them all together. Also, anonymous question. At one brief point of time, for a minute or so, I was relieved that my parent was dying, because that would end the suffering and would add my responsibility to take care of my sick parent. But I really loved my parent more than anyone in the world. But then there is so much guilt. Then, oh, how could I feel that? I'm a bad person. I wish I never thought that. Now I would do anything to bring my parent back and take care of my parent, but I can't. Also, in some way, I feel responsible for my parents dying. Like, if I had to do this, or if I hadn't to do that, my parent wouldn't have died. How to deal with that? Yeah, thank you so much for your question. So one part of it is similar to the previous one, so I'll touch that too in a minute. The question about feeling relief and feeling guilty for feeling relieved, that is very common and very understandable. And if you like to know something personal, after my latest loss, it was years ago, the most difficult feeling for me was relief, because the person I lost was sick for a long time and I was absolutely exhausted, going from another country. and spending all my resources to be able to spend some time there and looking for solutions, and of course being just helpless. And I know that very well myself, and every second person I talk to about grief has similar stories to tell. So I'm absolutely not alone, nothing wrong with that. So what is relief? It's my favorite comparison. If you've attended my groups, you know that. Imagine you carry a heavy backpack full of stones and you carry it all the time, so you cannot put it off. You sleep with the backpack, you go shopping, do groceries with the backpack, you go outside, you go to work carrying this backpack, you meet friends carrying these backpacks. All the time you carry this backpack full of stones. And imagine that after like 1 month of carrying this backpack, you suddenly put it off. What will you feel? I think, I'm pretty sure you will feel like, oh my God, it's so good. You will like stretch your shoulders and breathe out and move more freely. And this is what relief is. Relief is a very natural feeling when we get free from something very heavy and very exhausting. And this cannot be any other way, because if we carry something very heavy and now we don't have it, we'll feel relieved. That's just natural. And caregiving and having a sick person that we need to make decisions for, we need to put resources into and spend time and effort, and of course the emotional part of it, watching someone being sick, it's very hard. It's one of the most exhausting things I think in the world. And of course it drains us. It takes a lot of energy from us. And it leaves us sometimes very empty and detached and exhausted, because of course it's hard. And when it ends, again, like with a backpack, right, we will feel relieved because they're not suffering anymore, because we can breathe out. We don't have to make decisions and watch them being in pain. We can maybe have some free time because we need that to function. This is why relief is the most natural thing. Yeah, please don't forget that. And it has nothing to do with your feelings for your person. It has nothing to do with your love or care for them. Again, it's just a natural reaction of the body and mind to the end of something very exhausting. And how we judge ourselves for that, then when it comes in, like the guilt, oh my God, I'm a bad person for feeling relieved. But again, it's not right or wrong. It's a physical reaction, like you put off your backpack. It's neutral. And the guilt comes on because relief is something like we consider positive, like it's more lightness. And how can we feel something positive when we lost someone? We should be just absolutely feeling all the bad feelings. And again, feelings are not bad or good. They are all natural. And I invite you in this case to think that two feelings can be contradictory, that they can coexist. Or maybe you think they are contradictory, though actually they are not. They're all natural. So your love can coexist with relief. Your grief can coexist with relief. Your guilt can coexist with relief. So you can have them all at the same time. It's not that you have only one feeling. There can be many of them, right? And they're all valid, absolutely valid. And how to work with that feeling. My favorite word that I heard in some training is to use of course, the word of course. And when you feel guilty for feeling relieved, you can say, of course I feel relieved, because it was very hard. It was very exhausting. And it was, for them, it was also very hard. So, yeah, they were sick, they were in pain. Of course I feel relieved. That's the most natural thing to do. That has nothing to do with my feelings. I still love them. I would do all the things I did for them 10 times, 100 times again, just to have them around me. But I'm human. I have my limitations. I have my physical, mental, emotional limitations. We will become exhausted. We will become exhausted. Yeah, it's like running a marathon without any stops, days, weeks, months. Of course, we get exhausted. And to remind yourself each time you catch yourself feeling guilty, say, so of course I feel relieved because it was very hard. Yeah. And repeat it because it has nothing to do with your feelings for your parent. You were there for them, you cared for them, and you are very human to be tired and be exhausted. Yeah, and another part of the question I think we answered already. I feel responsible for my parent dying. This regret, if I had made this decision, if I haven't had left the room, and so on. Again, please take time to look at the things you could control and you couldn't control. And in many cases, there are many things that we can't. And we feel responsible, which is very natural because we are very emotionally close to them and we were involved in their care, in their lives. And our mind tries to make meaning by replaying decisions, searching for control in the situation that actually were not in our hands. And I would invite you to think that you were a witness to your parents' decline and to their death, but not the cause of it. It's not your responsibility. Please be patient with yourself, be self-compassionate with yourself. We are just witnesses in many cases, but not the cause. Thank you for your question. Okay, the question from Kai. When my mom died in my arms during cancer, I get into the classic denial and anger spiral. The look of your corpse on the bed left a very deep scar in my mind. Since that day, I'm not my old myself. I feel like being reborn in a darker and harsher world. Before I tried to seek professional help, but always got rejected, and I neglected myself since I have no willpower anymore on working on that. At the moment, I'm stable and may make kind of progress by myself. Every day I think about my mom, but sometimes during that thinking, the very last days of her kick in my brain, and I see the images again and again of your lifeless body. It makes me crazy. Do you think it's a form of PTSD? Socially, I'm quite isolated since nobody back then cared about how my mom was or how I felt after her death. After work, I'm only in my flat. I like to be in a quiet environment and trying to turn my brain off and not think too much. Thank you for your question and for sharing this vulnerable story. Of course, I cannot give you any diagnosis online, and in general, I'm not a psychiatrist to do that. Recurring images can be a sign of PTSD, but there are many other elements of PTSD, so it would be very beneficial to consult with a professional about that because it can be many things coming together. Recurring images is a very common thing in grief, especially, of course, if we witness someone's death. And I do think it's also absolutely natural because it's something so heavy and so shocking. Of course, for our brain, it's something that stays there. And how to work with that? Professional help, I do think it's crucial because I don't know all other context. But if something is so heavy and so recurring, and especially if it affects your life in a way that you don't find anything meaningful and you isolate yourself, and if you cannot keep on working in some form or another, not necessarily like you did before, but in some form to keep up your life, it can be a sign of a heavier situation. So I would strongly encourage you to see the professional psychiatrist, psychotherapist. I know it can be hard to get access, but these things can be assessed only professionally. Luckily, nowadays there are methods to work with that. It can be successful. It can become easier. Yeah, I'm also a person with PTSD, and there are ways to work with that. It can get better, for sure, with professional help. On your own, I mean, in the lighter cases, because I cannot assess your case, I usually invite to try all kind of switching your focus to something else. So if you have an image coming up, to shift your focus to something else immediately or as soon as possible, like to feel your feet, right? To come back to your senses, to grab your hands, to hold some object in your hand and to feel the temperature of it, to listen to the sounds, like all these classical mindfulness exercises, like when you get back to the present moment with any kind of senses you have. Some people can do it more with listening. Some people they touch something and feel grounded, for example, the surface, feeling your weight. Some people find beneficial to look around and to name 5 things they can see, five things they can hear, 5 smells. That's difficult, but at least one smell. And so on, in some way to bring yourself back to present. Because when we go into this spiraling, either thoughts or images, it means we are in the past, like in the memories, or maybe in the future, like anxiety about the future. And so the very first aid exercise is to bring yourself back to present if possible. And when you repeat that, like, okay, the image pops up in your mind, bring yourself back to present, breathing, holding the object, shifting your focus. I know it can happen millions of times. Yeah, because they're just there. So bringing yourself back to present, bringing yourself back to present. It's a muscle that needs to be trained. Again, this is something that we can do ourselves. And again, in the complex cases, and especially if it's PTSD, it's very important to do deeper work with professionals because it's possible to work with these recurring images. Absolutely, it's possible. And to the parts of your comment that I'm not my old self, I feel like being reborn in a darker and harsher world. I mean, I would sign that myself as well. And many people I work that would do the same. Again, I encourage you to use this word, of course, to validate that. Of course, it's a different world. Of course, I'm not my old self because I lost someone who was important for me and who is important for me. The world is just objectively not the same. And especially if you are close to your mom, and especially if you witnessed her passing, it leaves a huge mark. And that would be unrealistic to expect that the world and our life will be the same and that we will be the same. We change, in many ways. And here there's a big part of acceptance to that. So to accept that it will never be the same. It can still be good. We can still find joy. We can still find purpose and should also, ideally, somehow at least, but it's not the same. It's in a different way. And not to have expectations to be as before. Because how? No, the situation is different. And we are different because we had this experience. Yeah, to let go of any expectations to be as before. It's a new world and new part of us. And it's very important because I see a lot of isolation in there and a lot of effort to be okay or to get better on your own. It can be very hard on your own. And I encourage you to look for connections, to look for professional help. I know it's hard. Keep looking, please, as much as it's possible for you. Go into groups, connect to other people for the grief-related topics, and also trying to make other social contacts within your capacities. Because grief is isolating experience on its own. And also for our mental health, even if you're not grieving, we do need social connections. Absolutely, we need them. Little by little, maybe taking little steps to expand your world outside of your flat. And so I encourage you to start really, really small, some micro actions of getting more contact with people that do you good. Maybe things that you're used to enjoy and you still enjoy doing, even just a little bit. You don't have to be super happy, but some things feel like okay for us, so we can do that. And again, not to push yourself to be absolutely like extroverted, going out and now I'm happy. No, it's not about that. It's to find some moments of peace, to find some moments of connection. And for that, connection to other people is crucial for our well-being, for our safety, for our mental health. So I would encourage you to look for more support, for more connection of any kind that is possible for you. And of course, be kind to yourself because it feels like you are doing a lot. And it can be very, very hard to be on your own with that. Again, we have our limitations. We are humans. I wish you a lot of strength with that because it's a hard one. And it's hard to be isolated with that. Yeah, thank you so much, Kai. Yeah, thank you. I wish you all the best. Okay, we have time for the last question. I'll try to be quick. How do you release grief that is bottled up inside, like locked away, when you can't feel anything, even though you want to? I'm unable to feel the grief. I'm not able to cry. I just feel frozen and numb and overwhelmed all the time. I wish I can cry, but I'm not even able to cry. There is some overwhelming weight on me, crushing me all the time, like some detached, faraway sadness, but I'm not able to feel it. How to connect with the grief and how to cry and how to process it if you're too numb? It's a brilliant question. Thank you so much. It's anonymous. It's also very common. Numbness, detachment, feeling empty or not feeling anything. It's also a very valid state, right? And what it tells us is usually that something is too big to address now, something is overwhelming to access, right? And so our body is trying to shield us, to protect us from this overwhelm that we had inside. So it's kind of a protection. It's like a shield from something that is too big to look into, to feel. Yeah, it's a very natural reaction, like a protective reaction. And then can be also this emotional dissociation. So we cannot feel or we are so detached. It's a signal of a big overwhelm or something so complex that it cannot be accessed all at once or not at all. I don't know the details, how far your loss is. Often, recently after the loss, it can be a very natural reaction because it's just so heavy. And this is a protective reaction of our mind and body. And later, it can also become our coping mechanism. So over time, we can block feelings. So we can just push them away because it's too much. We can't and don't want to look into it or both. Yeah, so it depends on where you are in the process, right? And how our tendencies are to cope and to address the feelings. First of all, if it's very recent for you and you're absolutely numb and detached, I invite you to accept that as it is because it's just what it is now. It's not the time to access it all. Maybe your nervous system wouldn't bear to access it all. It's just too much. And also not to focus much on crying because crying is only one form of expressing emotions. There can be many other forms. Another thing is that, of course, gradually we have to access our feelings. There's some time after the loss. Again, there is no timeline for that. But then if we feel this heaviness and we actually want to see what is inside, but we somehow can, it's worth doing again these micro exercises, micro actions to access your feelings. Usually I invite to start with the body and not the emotions themselves. Of course, it's not really good to differentiate it, but to make it more understandable. So sometimes we have this expectation that now I will cry and have this huge emotional relief and I will grieve, like in the movie, and they sit in front of the ocean or up on the cliff and they are so sad and they are grieving. Just this is how real grief is. I do feel there's this romanticized image of grief also because of the movies or literature that it's something like really this huge relief. Thing is that it can be anything. On some days it can be huge release, emotional release, and some days it can be just miserable state of not being able to do anything and not feeling anything. And one day you can be angry, and one day you can be just tired, and one day you can be frustrated. Can be anything. So there is no map or rule for grief. Yeah. So the only important thing here is that over time we do need to access the feelings somehow. And I invite you, as I said before, to start with your body. If you're completely numb and you feel like it's like all blocked and I don't know what to do with that, to start with simple body exercises, with mindfulness, with gentle movement, and try to focus what you can feel in the body. For example, if you're lying down, you can try to notice what parts of your body you can feel. For example, sometimes we are so tired or so numb we cannot feel even our bodies. Yeah, but you can see, okay, can I feel my hand now? Can you feel the fingers? Are they there? It's okay. I can feel my fingers. Maybe you can feel your feet. Maybe you can feel your head. Maybe you had a headache and you can notice that. So I invite you to notice what you can feel in your body. Yeah, because these are small steps to have more awareness and to have more access to your body and ultimately to your feelings. Yeah, so you don't have to sit and say, okay, now I will feel all the sadness or all the grief I have. We should start small, right? So little by little to reconnect to your body in a very gentle way. Yeah, it can be slow movement, like you're walking and you notice how your feet touch the ground. Maybe you notice your breath. Yeah, it doesn't have to be long. Just some moments of noticing that your body is here and you can actually feel something physically. You can place a hand on your chest, on your belly, and to notice how it's moving with your breath. Later, if you like, you can also notice what's going on. Maybe you say, I have a headache. I feel it here. Or it's all tense. My neck is tensed. Or I feel tightness in my stomach. Or actually not. My head is light. So everything that you can feel in your body, it's actually a very huge step to access our emotions. So I invite you to do that. If you think you cannot feel anything, okay, what can you feel? And most probably you will find some parts of your body that you can feel. If you cannot feel parts of your body, you can step, with a sound and you will probably hear the sound of your step or scratch something or do some sounds. So bring awareness to your body, to what you can feel, to sensations, to body parts. And then again, to continue very small, to schedule 5 minutes or 10 minutes window for yourself, like really schedule like a time slot when you allow yourself to feel what you feel. No agenda, no expectations. And you're, for example, in a quiet place and you say, now, okay, I just want to be with what it is. Because if you can't feel grief, it doesn't matter because numbness is also the form of grief. It's a part of it. Yeah. So you do have grief if you're going through that. It's more how it manifests, right? And you can say, okay, I allow myself to be as I am in these 5 or 10 minutes. I'll just sit and whatever comes up is just fine. If I'm numb, I'm okay. If I'm start crying, okay. If I start thinking about something else, I will bring myself back gently and see what comes up. Maybe you want to do a little ritual, to light a candle, to maybe look at the picture, to write something, to dedicate this time, really short time, just some minutes, to allow yourself to be like as you are without any expectations, to feel, to access, to process, just let it be. And repeat it again. The key is to repeat it. And so your brain, your nervous system will know that they have this time to just be, to feel without any pressure. And this is the key because little by little, you will feel more and more, or you will notice more and more things. And again, it's not a competition. One day you can feel something, one day you will be very distracted and somewhere else. Just put yourself back. Yeah, again, feel your hands, feel your feet. And again, give yourself credit for other expressions of grief. It's not only about crying. It's not only about being sad. You may be tired. You may be irritated. You may be restless. You may be anxious. It also can be a manifestation of grief. It's all valid what you're going through. So give yourself permission to do these little steps. Let me check the question again. How to connect with grief? Yes. So we cannot process something that we cannot feel, right? There's this saying that I really like: in order to heal, we need to feel, or we can only heal what we can feel, right? And this is why these windows or these moments of feeling, of allowing ourselves to feel, are so important. Yeah. And it also can be beneficial to look for connections, as we talked before, to go to the grief groups. I have a grief online group. It's free. I link it in the video, so you're welcome anytime. to listen to different guided exercises. Of course, professional help, a therapist or grief coach, a friend with a similar experience. So to grieve with other people is very, very healing, because I believe, and I talk about it in all my videos, I believe that grief is a collective experience. Of course, it's very, very personal. And of course, no one will ever truly know how we feel and understand this, because they are not us. But I do believe this is a collective experience. In more traditional cultures, people usually grieve collectively. They have all kinds of rituals and songs and arrangements, and for a pretty long time. And it has this healing power because we share this. We share these feelings, we share the memories, we share the stories, we share the sadness and the joy. And it's important to have these connections. Of course, we don't always have community. Sometimes we don't even have family left, or we cannot connect to them on that level because we're not used to, or like the dynamics doesn't allow that. So we can find these people somewhere else. Yeah. In the groups, in a professional setting, in a friend circle, it's important to connect. All right. And if you feel really overwhelmed, of course, it's really beneficial to see the professional who can help you find the ways to cope, tools that can help you access your feelings. But yourself, again, please start small. Do not expect yourself to, make it in one day. I understand this desire. Now I will feel everything and now I will grieve and then it will get better. It's, to make it through this somehow. And it happens over time. Be patient with yourself. Do not force yourself to feel it all at once. Do not force yourself to cry, because it's not the only form of grieving. And try to connect more with your body. Try all forms of self-care that accessible for you. All kind of safe connections that you can access. And lots of patience. Okay, so we'll close here. Please feel free to check the resources and upcoming events, and there are lots of free materials available online. I will link some of them in the description of the video. Thank you for your questions. I think that grief can cause a lot of anxiety because usually we don't know what will happen. It's a very individual process that barely has any rules, and that's why it can be so confusing. And all these questions are just so perfectly valid. And even after years of my own grief and after years of professional training, I still have questions myself. So it's okay to be confused. It's okay not to know the answers. It's okay not to know the way. The most important thing always, please focus on micro actions of self-care, on micro actions of accessing your feelings whenever it's safe for you. You don't have to do anything big. The most important thing is to accept what it is, to let it be, absolutely as it is, and focus on self-care in any forms and look for support, because we are not supposed to do that alone. Thank you for joining. And any further questions, comments, please contact me on social media, on my website. I hope you find it useful. Thank you so much for joining.